r/ProRevenge friend tried to blackmail me using my twin, so I destroyed them. The screenshot on my phone made my blood run cold. There I was, apparently making out with my professor in his office, except I'd never been alone with Professor Martinez in my life, let alone kissed him. Pretty convincing, right? Jake's voice came through my earbuds with that smug tone I was only now recognizing. Amazing what a good camera angle and the right lighting can do. My hands were shaking as I stared at the image. It looked exactly like me, same face, same hair, even the same scar on my chin from when I fell off my bike at 8. But I knew with absolute certainty that this had never happened. This is impossible, I whispered, sinking onto my dorm room bed. Jake, this isn't real. You know this isn't real. Does it matter what's real? He laughed, and the sound made my stomach turn. What matters is what people will believe. Your boyfriend Tyler will definitely believe it. The academic board will believe it. Your parents will believe it when they see their perfect child throwing away their full-ride scholarship for some cheap thrill with a professor. I felt like I was drowning. Jake had been my best friend since freshman year. We'd stayed up all night studying together, shared our deepest secrets, supported each other through family drama and relationship problems. I trusted him completely. I don't understand, I said, my voice barely audible. Why are you doing this? Because you have something I need. His tone shifted, becoming businesslike and cold. That inheritance from your grandmother? The one sitting in your trust fund that you get access to next month? I need that money, and you're going to give it to me. $50,000. My grandmother's final gift to help me start my life after college, maybe put a down payment on a small house or start my own business. She'd worked 2 jobs her entire life to save that money. Jake, I can't just. Yes, you can. And you will. Another photo appeared on my screen. This one showed me apparently accepting an envelope of cash from a guy I'd never seen before in some sketchy-looking alley. I have dozens of these. Photos of you cheating on Tyler, taking bribes, in compromising positions with married professors, buying test answers. Your choice how many people see them. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The photos looked absolutely real, but I knew they were impossible. Then something clicked, a memory from last month when I jokingly told Jake how my twin brother Marcus and I still confused people sometimes, even though we lived in different states now. Marcus, I breathed into the phone. Jake's silence told me everything. You got my brother involved in this. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. How did you even? Marcus was surprisingly easy to convince once I told him it was for a harmless prank. Amazing how trusting your whole family is. Jake's voice dripped with satisfaction. He drove up here 3 weekends in a row, thinking he was helping me surprise you for your birthday. Really committed to the role, I have to say. The room was spinning. My own twin brother, manipulated into helping create fake evidence that could destroy my entire future. And Jake, someone I'd considered family, orchestrating it all. You have 24 hours to figure out how to transfer that money to me, Jake continued. Or everyone you care about sees what kind of person you really are. Well, what kind of person they'll think you are. Same difference. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone in complete shock. I sat frozen for what felt like hours, my phone burning hot in my trembling hands. The photos Jake had sent were still there, mocking me with their impossible reality. Every time I looked at them, my stomach dropped further. Finally, my fingers moved almost automatically, dialing Marcus's number. It rang 4 times before his familiar voice answered. Hey sis. What's up? The casual warmth in his greeting made everything worse. Marcus, we need to talk. About Jake. The pause that followed told me everything. Oh. Oh shit. He said you knew about the surprise. What surprise? My voice came out sharper than intended. Marcus, what exactly did you do with him? Marcus's voice got smaller. He said you were applying for some kind of scholarship and needed photos for the application portfolio. Something about showing leadership and academic engagement. He had me dress up in some of your clothes he borrowed and pose for pictures around campus. My heart sank. What kind of pictures? Just normal stuff. Meeting with professors, studying in the library, talking to other students. He said the scholarship committee wanted to see evidence of academic relationships and campus involvement. Marcus paused. Why? What's going on? He said it was supposed to be a surprise celebration when you got the scholarship. I closed my eyes, feeling sick. Jake had played my brother perfectly, exploiting his desire to help me succeed. Marcus, those photos weren't for a scholarship. Jake is using them to blackmail me. What? The shock in his voice was genuine. That's impossible. He's your best friend. He talks about you all the time, says how proud he is of your achievements. Proud enough to try to steal $50,000 from me. I quickly explained what Jake had shown me, how he manipulated the innocent photos Marcus had posed for into something completely different. Jesus Christ. Marcus's voice was shaking now. I had no idea. He seemed so genuine, so concerned about making sure everything was perfect for you. He even paid for my gas money and bought me dinner each time I drove up. A new horrible thought occurred to me. Marcus, did anyone see you on campus? Anyone who might recognize you as me? Another devastating pause. He specifically had me avoid crowds. Said the photos would look more authentic if they seemed candid, not staged. But now that I think about it. His voice dropped. There were a few times when people waved at me or called out your name from across the courtyard. Jake told me to just wave back and keep walking. My blood went cold. This wasn't just about the photos anymore. If Jake had witnesses who thought they'd seen me in compromising situations, his blackmail material became exponentially more powerful. Even if I could somehow prove the photos were fake, there would be people who'd swear they saw me with their own eyes. There's more, Marcus said quietly. The last time I was there, Jake had me go to some off-campus locations too. A coffee shop, a hotel lobby, some office building downtown. He said they were places where scholarship recipients typically volunteered or interned. Hotel lobby. My mind immediately went to the worst possible scenarios Jake could have constructed with that footage. Marcus, I need you to remember everything. Every place he took you, every photo he staged, anyone who might have seen you. I was already grabbing my laptop, mind racing with possibilities. And I need you to think, did he ever seem to be recording video instead of just taking photos? The silence that followed was answer enough. Jake hadn't just created a handful of compromising images. He'd built an entire false narrative of my life, complete with witnesses and possibly video evidence. The scope of his betrayal was more calculated and thorough than I'd initially realized. 23 hours left, and the trap was even more complex than I'd feared. The next few hours were a blur of desperate phone calls and growing horror. Marcus stayed on the line as we pieced together Jake's elaborate scheme, and with each detail, I realized how thoroughly I'd been played. He had a whole folder, Marcus said, his voice thick with guilt. Photos of you from your social media, screenshots of your class schedule, even copies of your student ID. Said he needed them for reference to make sure everything looked authentic. I felt nauseous. How long was he planning this? At least 3 months. Maybe longer. Marcus paused. The first time he contacted me was right after Christmas break. Said he wanted to start planning your birthday surprise early because you deserved something really special. Christmas break. That was when I'd mentioned my upcoming inheritance to Jake during one of our late-night study sessions. I'd been excited about finally having some financial security, and he'd seemed so happy for me. Now I realized he'd been calculating how to steal it from the moment I told him. My phone buzzed with a new message from Jake. Another photo, this one showing me in what looked like Professor Martinez's car in the faculty parking lot. The timestamp showed it was from 2 weeks ago, during my European literature midterm. I remembered that day perfectly because I'd spent 12 hours straight in the library preparing. The attention to detail was horrifying. Jake had somehow gotten access to Professor Martinez's schedule, knew when he'd be on campus, and positioned Marcus accordingly. How long had he been watching my professors? Learning their routines. Marcus, did Jake ever ask you about your classes? Your professors? Yeah, constantly. He said he was thinking about transferring to my school and wanted to know about the faculty. Marcus's voice cracked. God, I was so stupid. He pumped me for information about everything, your friends, your boyfriend, your daily schedule. I thought he was just being a good friend, trying to understand your life better. The pieces were falling into place in the most terrifying way. Jake hadn't just manipulated Marcus, he turned my own brother into an unwitting intelligence source. Every innocent detail Marcus had shared about our family, our history, our relationships had been weaponized against me. My laptop chimed with an email notification. The sender was an address I didn't recognize, but when I opened it, Jake's signature was at the bottom. The subject line read, additional considerations. Just wanted you to see the full scope of what I have, the email began. Thought you might also be interested to know that your boyfriend Tyler has been asking questions about your recent behavior changes. Apparently, someone matching your description was seen at that downtown hotel bar 3 weeks ago, acting very friendly with a married businessman. Tyler's starting to wonder why you've been so secretive lately. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. 3 weeks ago, I'd been at my part-time job at the campus bookstore until closing. I had witnesses, time cards, security footage. But Jake had positioned Marcus at that hotel bar, knowing Tyler's friends hung out in that area, knowing someone would see me and report back. The email continued, I've also taken the liberty of creating some additional insurance. Your academic advisor received an anonymous tip about suspicious activity in Professor Martinez's office. Nothing concrete yet, but they're keeping an eye on the situation. Would be a shame if more evidence surfaced. I called the advisor's office immediately, my heart pounding. The secretary confirmed that yes, there had been some concerns raised, and yes, Professor Martinez had been asked to be extra cautious about meeting with students alone. The investigation wasn't official yet, but it was brewing. Jake hadn't just threatened to destroy my reputation, he'd already started the process. Even if I somehow exposed his scheme, damage had already been done. Seeds of doubt had been planted in Tyler's mind, in the faculty's mind, in the academic community I'd worked so hard to build relationships with. 18 hours left, and Jake was already 3 steps ahead of me. The worst part was realizing Jake had been documenting everything. As I dug deeper into the timeline Marcus was helping me reconstruct, it became clear that Jake hadn't just been planning this scheme, he'd been studying me like a lab rat for months. Remember when you got food poisoning in February? Marcus asked during our 3rd hour on the phone. Jake called me that night, said he was worried about you and wanted to know if there was anything he could do to help. I did remember. I'd been violently ill for 2 days, missed classes, and Jake had been so sweet about bringing me soup and notes. Except now I realized what he'd really been doing, mapping out my vulnerabilities, learning my patterns, figuring out when I'd be too distracted to notice his surveillance. He asked me so many questions about your habits, Marcus continued. What time you usually went to bed, which professors you liked best, whether you ever skipped class. I thought he was just trying to be a better friend. My laptop was open to my banking website, the inheritance fund balance glowing mockingly at me. $50,000. The exact amount Jake was demanding. It wasn't a coincidence, he knew down to the penny what I had access to. A new text from Jake appeared, hope you're making progress on our arrangement. By the way, thought you should know Tyler's planning to surprise you at lunch tomorrow. Might be awkward if he's still upset about your recent extracurricular activities. My blood froze. Tyler and I had lunch plans, but they weren't supposed to be a surprise. Which meant Jake was somehow monitoring Tyler's movements too. How deep did this surveillance go? I called Tyler immediately. Hey, are you okay? You sound weird, he said when he answered. Tyler, who have you been talking to about me lately? What do you mean? Anyone. Friends, classmates, anyone who's asked questions about me or made comments about my behavior. There was a pause. Actually, yeah. Jake mentioned you'd been stressed about something but wouldn't tell him what. He seemed really concerned, asked if I'd noticed you acting differently. Of course. Jake had been working Tyler too, planting seeds of doubt while positioning himself as the worried best friend. What did you tell him? Just that you've been distracted lately, maybe a little secretive. Why? Is everything okay? I couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet. Not when Jake had video and photographic evidence that could destroy Tyler's trust in me completely. Just some family stuff. Nothing serious. But Tyler wasn't buying it. Babe, people are saying they've seen you around campus at weird times, in places you don't usually go. And yesterday, Melissa swore she saw you at that downtown hotel bar, but you told me you were at work. The trap was tightening. Jake hadn't just created false evidence, he poisoned my entire social circle against me. Every relationship I'd built, every connection I'd made, was now suspect. After I hung up with Tyler, I sat staring at my reflection in my laptop screen. For the first time in my life, I looked at my own face and felt afraid. Jake had weaponized my appearance, my identity, my very existence against me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo I hadn't seen before, Marcus in my clothes, apparently receiving an envelope from someone whose face was carefully obscured. The timestamp showed last weekend. Final installment, Jake's message read. Just so you know, I'm not bluffing about having everything I need. 16 hours left. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I realized with growing horror that Jake wasn't just blackmailing me for money. He was destroying my life systematically, piece by piece, and seemed to be enjoying every moment of it. This wasn't just about $50,000 anymore. This was about complete and total control. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Jake wasn't planning to stop at $50,000. I was scrolling through old text conversations with him, looking for any clue I'd missed, when I found it buried in a casual exchange from last month. He joked about how comfortable my life was, how I'd never had to worry about money like he did. At the time, I'd felt bad and offered to help with his expenses. He declined, saying he had other plans. Other plans. Not a plan, plans, plural. My inheritance was just the beginning. I called my bank immediately, hands shaking as I navigated their security questions. I need to know if there are any pending transfer requests on my trust fund account. The representative put me on hold for several agonizing minutes. When she returned, her voice was professional but concerned. Ma'am, there is a transfer authorization form that was submitted this morning for the full amount of your trust. However, it's been flagged for additional verification because the signature doesn't quite match our records. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, submitted this morning? Someone came into our downtown branch claiming to be you. They had proper identification and knew your account details, but when they were asked to provide additional verification, they said they needed to retrieve some documents from their car and never returned. Jake had already tried to steal the money and failed. But the fact that he'd attempted it meant he was getting desperate, and desperate people made dangerous decisions. I need to put a complete freeze on that account immediately, I said. Of course. We'll also need to file a report about the attempted fraud. As I hung up, my phone exploded with notifications. 5 missed calls from Jake, and a string of increasingly angry texts. Having second thoughts. Bad idea. Answer your fucking phone. You think you're clever? I'm just getting started. Then, the one that made my blood freeze, check your email. Now. My laptop screen showed 17 new emails, all from different addresses I didn't recognize. But when I opened the first one, I realized Jake had created accounts using variations of my name, my first name with my last initial, my last name with my first initial, combinations that looked legitimate enough to fool people who didn't look closely. The emails were sent to everyone in my contacts list. My professors, classmates, family members, Tyler, even my part-time job supervisor. The subject lines varied, but the content was consistent. Apologies for recent behavior, explanations for mistakes I've made, confessions about getting involved with the wrong people. Each email was carefully crafted to sound like me having a breakdown, admitting to various forms of academic dishonesty and personal misconduct. They were vague enough to be believable but damaging enough to destroy my reputation completely. My phone rang. Tyler. What the hell is going on? His voice was a mixture of confusion and hurt. I just got this weird email from you talking about making mistakes and getting involved with married professors. And my roommate said he saw you downtown an hour ago, but you told me you were in class. An hour ago. While I'd been on the phone with the bank, Jake had sent someone else, probably Marcus again, to be seen around campus. Creating alibis, manufacturing evidence, ensuring that even my own boyfriend wouldn't believe my denials. Tyler, please, I can explain. Can you? Because I'm starting to feel like I don't know you at all. The line went dead. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with calls and texts from confused family members and friends, all asking about the strange emails, all wanting to know if I was okay, if I needed help, if the confessions were real. Jake had just executed a coordinated character assassination, and I was powerless to stop it. 14 hours left, and he'd already won. I was drowning in a sea of notifications when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello, is this Sarah? An older woman's voice, professional but concerned. Yes, who is this? This is Dean Richardson from the Academic Affairs Office. I received a rather disturbing email this afternoon that appeared to be from you, and I wanted to reach out immediately. My heart sank. Dean Richardson, I can explain. The email outlines some very serious allegations about inappropriate relationships with faculty members and academic misconduct. Normally, I would schedule a formal meeting, but given the urgent nature of your apparent confession, I think we need to address this immediately. The walls felt like they were closing in. That email wasn't from me. Someone is impersonating me, trying to. I understand this must be overwhelming, she interrupted gently. Students often feel regret after coming forward about these situations. But we need to investigate these claims properly. I'm going to need you to come in first thing Monday morning with any evidence you mentioned in your email. Evidence I'd never promised because I'd never sent the email. What exactly did the email say? There was a pause as she presumably pulled it up. You mentioned having documentation of these inappropriate relationships, and that you were ready to provide proof of the academic dishonesty you've been involved in. You also referenced feeling guilty about taking advantage of professors who trusted you. Jake had crafted each word perfectly. He'd made it sound like I was voluntarily confessing while also claiming to have evidence that he could conveniently provide if I didn't comply with his demands. Dean Richardson, I never sent that email. Someone has hacked my accounts. Sarah, I understand you're frightened. These are serious accusations you've made against yourself and our faculty. But we can work through this together. However, I do need to inform you that I'm required to immediately report this to the Title IX office and begin a formal investigation. After she hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Jake hadn't just demanded money, he triggered a nuclear bomb in my academic life. Even if I could somehow prove my innocence, the investigation alone would follow me forever. Graduate schools, employers, everyone would see that I'd been investigated for academic misconduct and inappropriate relationships with professors. My laptop chimed with another email, this time from Jake's real account. Feeling overwhelmed? This is just the beginning. I've got emails ready to go to your parents, your grandmother's estate lawyer, and Tyler's parents explaining your recent gambling problem and why you desperately need money. I've also prepared a very detailed confession about how you've been stealing from your part-time job to fund your lifestyle. But here's the thing, I can make all of this go away just as easily as I made it appear. One simple money transfer, and suddenly all these emails become the result of a hacker who's been caught and prosecuted. Your reputation gets restored, your relationships get repaired, and your future stays intact. 13 hours, Sarah. The wire transfer instructions are attached. Don't make me get creative with Phase 2. Phase 2. There was more he could do to me. I opened the attachment with shaking hands. The wire transfer instructions were detailed and professional, routing the money through what looked like legitimate business accounts. Jake had clearly done this before. But something in the account routing numbers looked familiar. I grabbed my laptop and started cross-referencing the numbers against student databases I had access to through my work-study job in the registrar's office. 20 minutes later, I found it. The business account belonged to a company that had received several scholarship payments over the past 2 years, payments that had been flagged by the financial aid office as suspicious but never fully investigated. Jake hadn't just been planning to blackmail me. He'd been running scholarship fraud for years, stealing money meant for students who actually needed it. And now I was sitting on evidence that could destroy him just as thoroughly as he was destroying me. For the first time in hours, I felt something other than helpless terror. I felt the beginning of rage. The scholarship fraud discovery should have felt like a victory, but as I dug deeper into the financial records, my hands started shaking again. This wasn't just bigger than my situation, it was so much worse. Jake had been systematically stealing from students for at least 3 years. Scholarship funds, emergency grants, even memorial funds set up by grieving families. The amounts were always just small enough to avoid triggering major audits, but when I added them up, we were looking at over $200,000. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom, "Honey, I got a strange email from you about making some mistakes at school. Are you in trouble? Dad and I are worried." My stomach dropped. Jake was escalating faster than his original timeline. He'd said 13 hours, but he was already contacting my family. I tried calling my mom back, but it went straight to voicemail. She was probably at work, but the timing felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. Another notification popped up, this time from my work-study supervisor at the registrar's office. "Sarah, we need to talk first thing Monday. There are some discrepancies in financial records that have your access codes attached. Please don't discuss this with anyone until we meet." My blood went cold. Jake hadn't just used my identity for photos, he'd somehow gained access to my work computer systems. Every database I just searched to find evidence against him, he'd already been inside. He'd been using my credentials to facilitate his fraud scheme. I was about to call my supervisor when my laptop screen flickered. For a split second, I could have sworn I saw a cursor moving that wasn't mine. I stared at the screen, waiting, and then it happened again. Someone was remotely accessing my computer. Files started opening and closing rapidly. My browser history from the past hour, all my searches about Jake's scholarship fraud, was being deleted in real time. Then my email drafts folder opened, revealing dozens of messages I'd never written. Confession letters to professors, apologies to my family, detailed explanations of academic misconduct that painted me as someone who'd been lying and cheating for years. He'd been preparing this for months, crafting my digital suicide note piece by piece. I slammed my laptop shut and grabbed my phone, but it was too late. A new text from Jake. "Really thought you could play detective? Cute. You just triggered Phase 2. My phone started buzzing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. The first one I answered was a reporter from the campus newspaper. "Hi, this is Mike from the Daily. We received some interesting information about scholarship fraud in the registrar's office. Would you like to comment before we publish?" I hung up immediately, but the calls kept coming. Someone had tipped off the campus media that there was a financial scandal brewing, and somehow my name was attached to it. Within minutes, I had 3 voicemails from different reporters, 2 missed calls from my academic advisor, and a text from Tyler. "People are saying crazy stuff about you online. What's happening?" I checked social media with growing horror. Someone had created accounts that looked like mine and had been posting for weeks, subtle things that I hadn't noticed because I barely used those platforms. Posts about being stressed about money, hints about doing things I wasn't proud of, gradual personality changes that painted a picture of someone spiraling out of control. The most recent post, uploaded just minutes ago, was a long rambling message about feeling guilty and wanting to come clean about everything. It was written in my voice, using my mannerisms, referencing inside jokes and personal details that only someone who'd studied me intensively would know. Jake hadn't just stolen my inheritance money, he'd stolen my entire identity and spent months building a false version of me that everyone would believe was real. And now he was using that digital puppet to destroy my life in real time. My phone rang again. This time it was campus security. "Sarah. This is Officer Martinez. We need you to come in for questioning immediately. There's been a serious allegation made against you, and we have some evidence we need to discuss." The trap was closing faster than I could think. I hung up on campus security and immediately called my academic advisor, Dr. Peterson. She answered on the first ring, which was never a good sign. "Sarah, thank God. Where are you right now?" "In my dorm room." Dr. Peterson, whatever you've heard, I need you to know that someone is framing me. They've been using my identity. Slow down. Her voice was strained. I just got out of an emergency meeting with Dean Richardson and the financial aid office. There's security footage from 3 weeks ago showing someone who looks exactly like you accessing the scholarship database after hours. Your key card was used, your login credentials, everything. My mouth went dry. That wasn't me. I was working my shift at the bookstore that night. There are records. Sarah, I've seen the footage. Unless you have an identical twin who somehow got access to your credentials. She paused. Do you have a twin? The question hung in the air like a lifeline. Yes. Yes, I do. My brother Marcus. Someone's been manipulating him, using him to impersonate me. That's actually possible, Dr. Peterson said slowly. But Sarah, the situation is more complicated than just the financial stuff. Campus security found a USB drive in Professor Martinez's office with what appears to be personal photos on it. Photos of you. My heart stopped. What kind of photos? I can't get into specifics, but they're compromising enough that Professor Martinez has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. He swears he's never seen the USB drive before, but Jake had planted evidence in Professor Martinez's office. Physical evidence that would be impossible for an innocent professor to explain away. This wasn't just about destroying my reputation anymore. Jake was taking down anyone who might believe my story or support me. Dr. Peterson, you have to believe me. Someone has been planning this for months. They've been using my brother to create fake situations, they've hacked into my computer, Sarah, listen to me carefully. Whether I believe you or not doesn't matter right now. The evidence against you is overwhelming, and more keeps surfacing every hour. You need a lawyer, immediately. And you need to prepare for the possibility that criminal charges might be filed. Criminal charges. The words hit me like a physical blow. Jake wasn't just trying to steal my money, he was trying to send me to prison. After Dr. Peterson hung up, I sat in my dark dorm room as the reality of my situation crystallized. Jake had created a perfect storm: financial fraud with my credentials, photographic evidence of inappropriate relationships, witness testimony from people who'd seen me in compromising situations, and now physical evidence planted in a professor's office. Even if I could prove Marcus had been impersonating me, I'd still have to explain how someone got access to my work login, my key card, my personal information. My phone buzzed with a new message from Jake, enjoying phase 2. Here's the thing, I'm about to release the photos and videos that will completely destroy Tyler's faith in you. But I'm also going to send them to your parents, your grandmother's estate lawyer, and every member of the scholarship committee that awarded you your grant money. However, there's still time to make this all go away. Wire the money in the next 6 hours, and I'll provide evidence that you were the victim of identity theft by a criminal organization I've been tracking. I'll be the hero who saved you, and you'll be the grateful friend who pays me a small reward for my detective work. 6 hours, Sarah. After that, the photos go public and the criminal investigation gets a lot more interesting. I realized with growing terror that Jake had built the perfect blackmail scenario. He could either destroy me completely or save me heroically, and either way, he'd get what he wanted. The money, the control, and probably my gratitude for the rest of my life. But I was done being his victim. I stared at Jake's latest message until the words blurred together. 6 hours. The countdown felt like a bomb ticking in my chest, but something had shifted in my mind. The helpless terror was crystallizing into cold, calculated fury. Jake had made one crucial mistake in his perfect plan: he'd shown me exactly how he operated. And if he'd done this to me, he'd done it to others. I grabbed my phone and called Marcus back. I need you to think carefully about every interaction you had with Jake. Did he ever mention other friends? Other people he was helping with surprises or projects? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Actually, yeah. The second time I came up to campus, he got a call from someone who sounded really upset. A girl. He kept saying things like, "Don't worry, everything will work out, and, trust me, I have experience with this kind of situation." My pulse quickened. What else did he say? Something about how he'd helped another friend get out of a similar problem last year. That he knew how to handle sensitive situations. Marcus paused. I thought he meant like relationship drama or family issues. Did he mention names? He called her Emma. Amy. Something with an E. I immediately thought of Emma Chen, a girl who'd been in my chemistry class last year. She'd abruptly transferred schools in the middle of spring semester, right after there had been whispers about some kind of scandal involving her and a teaching assistant. At the time, Jake had been sympathetic, saying he felt bad for her because people were spreading rumors. Now I wondered if Jake had been the one spreading them. I quickly logged into the student directory on my phone and searched for Emma's contact information. Her emergency contact was still listed, her mother's phone number. My hands were shaking as I dialed. A woman answered after 3 rings. Mrs. Chen. My name is Sarah, I went to school with Emma last year. I know this might sound strange, but I think someone who hurt your daughter is now targeting me, and I desperately need to ask Emma some questions. There was a long pause. Emma doesn't like to talk about what happened at school. Mrs. Chen, please. Did Emma know someone named Jake Morrison? The sharp intake of breath on the other end told me everything. How do you know that name? He's doing the same thing to me that he did to Emma, isn't he? Another pause, then Mrs. Chen's voice became urgent. Hold on, I'm getting Emma. Within minutes, Emma was on the phone, and my worst fears were confirmed. Jake had used almost the identical playbook on her, manipulated situations, created compromising photos, threatened to destroy her reputation unless she paid him. The only difference was that Emma had broken down and attempted to comply with his demands before her parents intervened and pulled her out of school. He said he had videos of me stealing from the bookstore where I worked, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. And photos of me with my supervisor that made it look like we were having an affair. None of it was real, but he'd somehow made it look completely legitimate. How much did he ask for? Every penny of my college savings. $15,000. Her voice cracked. When I tried to fight back, he escalated everything. Suddenly there were rumors everywhere, my supervisor was asking questions, my grades started being questioned. I had a complete breakdown. Emma, do you still have any evidence? Text messages, emails, anything. I saved everything. My parents wanted to go to the police, but the evidence he had against me looked so real that we were terrified it would make things worse. We just wanted to get me away from him. My heart was racing. Emma's case proved that Jake was a serial predator, but more importantly, it meant he'd left a trail of evidence with multiple victims. One person's word against Jake's might not be enough, but a pattern of behavior across multiple victims would be much harder to dismiss. Emma, I need your help. I think together we can stop him from doing this to anyone else. What do you need me to do? For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt like I had a weapon to fight back with. The relief of finding Emma was short-lived. As she sent me screenshots of her conversations with Jake from last year, I realized the scope of his operation was even more terrifying than I'd imagined. He had my class schedule memorized, Emma explained over the phone while I scrolled through the evidence. He knew when my professors held office hours, when I worked at the bookstore, even when my roommate would be out of town. It was like he'd been studying my life for months before he made his move. The screenshots showed Jake using the exact same manipulation tactics on Emma that he'd used on me. The same fake concern, the same gradual escalation, the same precise knowledge of her financial situation. But what made my blood run cold was the timestamp on the final message he'd sent her. Emma, look at the date on his last threat to you. March 15th. Yeah, that's when my parents pulled me out of school. Why? That's 3 days before he first contacted Marcus about helping with my birthday surprise. My hands were shaking as the timeline became clear. He moved directly from destroying your life to planning my destruction. This isn't opportunistic blackmail, this is his business model. Emma went quiet for a moment. Oh God. Sarah, there's something else. After I left school, I heard rumors about another girl the semester before me. A sophomore named Jess something. She apparently had some kind of breakdown over academic integrity issues and transferred to community college. 3 victims. At least 3 that we knew about. Jake had been perfecting his system for over 2 years, learning from each case, refining his methods until he'd created the nightmare scenario I was now trapped in. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, having fun playing detective? You're even more predictable than Emma was. I felt like ice water had been poured down my spine. Jake was monitoring my calls somehow. Either he'd hacked my phone more thoroughly than I realized, or... Emma, did you call me from your regular phone number? Yes, why? Hang up and call me back from a different phone. Now. While I waited, my mind raced through the implications. If Jake was intercepting my calls, he knew I'd found Emma. He knew we were comparing notes and building a case against him. Which meant he'd accelerate his timeline and escalate his threats. My laptop, still closed on my desk, suddenly chimed with a notification. I opened it carefully to find a new email from Jake's account with the subject line, New Timeline. Since you're so eager to involve other people in our private arrangement, I've decided to move things along. Check the campus news website in exactly 10 minutes. You'll find a very interesting story about financial aid fraud and a student who's been living a double life. Your photos with Professor Martinez will be attached to the article as evidence of the pattern of inappropriate behavior that led to your criminal activities. Tyler will receive personal copies, along with some additional images you haven't seen yet. But here's the really fun part, I've also prepared a detailed confession for you to submit to campus security. It explains how guilt over your actions drove you to consider hurting yourself, which is why you'll need immediate psychological intervention. The confession includes details about your accomplice, Marcus, and how you manipulated your own brother into helping with your schemes. You now have exactly 1 hour to wire the money. After that, everything goes live simultaneously and your story becomes public record. Oh, and Sarah. Don't bother trying to run or hide. I've already sent copies of everything to your parents' address and your grandmother's lawyer. Family dinner is going to be very interesting this weekend. Emma called back from her mother's phone just as I finished reading. Sarah, are you still there? He knows we talked. He's accelerating everything. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Emma, I need you to send everything you have to my email right now, then get your parents to call the police. We're out of time for building a careful case. What are you going to do? I looked at my laptop screen, at the banking website still open in another tab, at the wire transfer instructions that could make all of this disappear. 1 hour to decide between financial ruin and complete life destruction. I'm going to do something Jake won't expect, I said, my voice hardening with resolve. I'm going to fight back. The plan that formed in my mind was risky, but I was past caring about safe options. Jake had made one critical error in his surveillance. He was so focused on monitoring my communications that he'd gotten overconfident about his own security. I grabbed my laptop and started typing furiously. If Jake could create fake evidence, so could I. But instead of fabricating lies, I was going to use his own methods against him to expose the truth. First, I accessed the registrar's database using my legitimate work credentials, the same system Jake had been illegally using to facilitate his scholarship fraud. But instead of covering my tracks like he did, I was going to create an obvious trail that led directly to him. I pulled up every suspicious transaction from the past 3 years and cross-referenced them with Jake's class schedule, his campus employment records, and his financial aid status. The pattern was damning. Every fraudulent scholarship disbursement coincided with periods when Jake had legitimate access to student workers who could unknowingly provide cover for his activities. My phone buzzed with another text, 55 minutes left. The campus news editor is getting very excited about the story I've prepared for him. I ignored it and kept digging. Jake's student employment record showed something interesting. He'd worked in IT support for 2 semesters, which would have given him access to learn how to hack student accounts and install remote monitoring software. Even better, there were complaints filed against him for exceeding authorized access that had been dismissed as minor policy violations. Then I found what I was looking for. Jake's own financial records showed deposits that perfectly matched the amount stolen from scholarship funds, but with a 2-day delay, exactly the processing time for the money laundering accounts he'd set up. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I compiled everything into a comprehensive report. Financial fraud, identity theft, blackmail, evidence tampering, it was all there in black and white. But I needed more than just evidence. I needed to flip the narrative before Jake could publish his story. I opened a new browser window and logged into the campus anonymous tip system, the same portal that Jake had probably used to plant his false accusations against me. But instead of spreading lies, I uploaded every piece of evidence I'd found, along with Emma's screenshots and a detailed timeline of Jake's predatory behavior. Then I did something that would either save me or destroy me completely. I included my own real story. The truth about Marcus being manipulated, about the fake photos, about Jake's blackmail scheme. I attached my legitimate work schedule that proved I couldn't have been accessing the database after hours, my bookstore employment records that provided alibis for every incident Jake had fabricated. Most importantly, I included the remote access logs from my laptop that showed someone had been controlling my computer for months. IT security would be able to trace those connections directly back to Jake's devices. As I submitted the report, my phone rang. Campus security. Sarah, this is Officer Martinez again. We've received some very serious allegations, and I need you to come in immediately for questioning. Actually, Officer Martinez, I think you're about to receive some much more serious allegations about the person who's been framing me. My voice was steadier than I felt. I just submitted a comprehensive report about financial fraud and blackmail that you'll want to investigate before taking any action based on fabricated evidence. There was a pause. Sarah, I need you to stay exactly where you are. Don't contact anyone, don't leave your room. We're sending someone to escort you to the station. After hanging up, I realized Jake's plan was still moving forward on schedule. Even with evidence proving his guilt, the machinery he'd set in motion was too complex to stop instantly. My report would eventually clear my name, but not before his false accusations did massive damage to my reputation and relationships. My laptop chimed with a new email notification. Jake again, clever girl. But you're about to learn why I always win. Check your social media. With growing dread, I opened Instagram to find that Jake had just posted a live video from what appeared to be my account. The video was live streaming from what looked like my dorm room, but I was staring at my own screen in horror. The camera showed me sitting on my bed, crying and talking about how guilty I felt about everything I'd done. But I was standing across the room, watching this impossible scene unfold. I can't live with what I've done to Professor Martinez, the fake me was saying on screen. And I've been stealing money from students who actually deserve those scholarships. My brother Marcus helped me, but he didn't know how bad things had gotten. The live stream viewer count was climbing rapidly. Comments were pouring in from classmates, professors, even my parents who must have gotten notifications. Everyone was watching what they believed was my complete breakdown and confession. But I was standing in my empty dorm room, nowhere near my bed, and I'd never said any of those words. My phone exploded with notifications as people shared the video. Text messages from Tyler, missed calls from my parents, comments from friends begging me to stop broadcasting and get help. In real time, I was watching my entire social network react to a deepfake video that looked absolutely convincing. What the hell, I started to say, then froze. The fake me on screen had just turned toward where I was standing, as if she could hear me. That was impossible. Unless. I spun around and spotted it, a tiny camera mounted behind my desk lamp, so small I'd never noticed it. Jake hadn't just hacked my computer and phone. He'd been recording me in my own room for months, building a database of my movements, expressions, and mannerisms to create this digital puppet show. The live stream continued with me pulling out printed emails and bank statements, explaining how I'd been covering up my crimes but couldn't handle the guilt anymore. Every document looked legitimate because Jake had fabricated them with the same attention to detail he'd used for everything else. My door handle rattled. Someone was trying to get in. Sarah, open up. It's campus security. I looked at my laptop screen where the fake confession was still streaming live, then at my door where security was demanding entry. In about 30 seconds, they were going to find me in the same room where this confession was being broadcast, and I had no way to prove I wasn't the one making it. My phone rang. Jake. Beautiful work, don't you think? His voice was full of satisfaction. Deepfake technology has come so far. I've been feeding video of you into the system for months, training it on your voice patterns, facial expressions, everything. The live stream is just playing a pre-recorded video I made yesterday, but everyone thinks it's happening right now. You're insane, I whispered, backing away from the door as the pounding got louder. I'm thorough. Even if your little report to campus security eventually proves some of my evidence was fabricated, no one's going to forget watching you confess live on social media. Public opinion doesn't care about technical investigations. The door handle turned. Someone had gotten a key. Sarah Peterson. 2 campus security officers entered, followed by someone who looked like a counselor or social worker. We need you to step away from the computer and come with us. Officers, I'm not making that video. I pointed at my laptop screen desperately. Someone else is broadcasting that. I'm being framed. But even as I said it, I realized how insane it sounded. They were looking at a live stream that showed me confessing to crimes, and I was standing in the same room claiming it wasn't real. The camera angle was perfect, it would be nearly impossible for anyone else to be broadcasting from this exact location. Ma'am, we're going to need you to end the live stream and come with us, the first officer said, approaching my laptop. Don't touch it. You'll see that I'm not controlling it. But as the officer reached for my computer, the live stream suddenly cut out. Perfect timing that made it look like I'd been operating it the entire time. Jake's voice came through my phone, which I'd forgotten was still connected to the call. Game over, Sarah. Enjoy explaining this one. The officers were reaching for their handcuffs when my phone started buzzing frantically with incoming calls. Dr. Peterson's name flashed on the screen. I need to answer this, I said desperately. Please, just give me 30 seconds. Sarah, where are you? Dr. Peterson's voice was urgent. Don't say anything to anyone until you hear this. We just received your report about Jake Morrison, and our IT department ran an immediate trace on those remote access logs you submitted. The officers were listening now, confusion replacing their certainty. They found active monitoring software running on 17 different student computers, all installed from Jake's campus IT credentials, Dr. Peterson continued, her voice carrying through the small room. The software has been recording keystrokes, accessing cameras, and storing footage for months. Sarah, you weren't just being blackmailed, you were being surveilled on a massive scale. One of the officers stepped closer to my phone. Ma'am, this is campus security. Can you repeat what you just said about monitoring software? This is Dr. Peterson, Academic Affairs. We have evidence that Jake Morrison has been running an extensive cyber-stalking operation targeting multiple students. The live stream you probably just witnessed was digitally fabricated using stolen footage. I felt a surge of vindication, but it was immediately crushed by a new notification on my laptop. Jake had sent a mass email to what looked like my entire contact list: professors, classmates, family, Tyler's family, even my grandmother's estate attorney. The subject line read, "The truth about my mental health crisis." The email was a masterpiece of manipulation, written in my voice, explaining how the evidence against Jake was fabricated by me during a psychotic break. It detailed my supposed history of mental illness, claimed that my report to campus security was part of a delusional episode where I believed I was being monitored by cameras that didn't exist. "He's still going," I said, showing the officers my screen. "Even with IT proving his surveillance, he's trying to make everyone think I'm having a breakdown and making it all up." My phone rang again. This time it was Tyler, and when I answered, his voice was strained with confusion. "Sarah, I just got the weirdest email from you. And my mom called saying she got one too, talking about psychiatric treatment and how you've been hiding your illness from everyone." "Tyler, that wasn't from me. But it came from your email address. And it references conversations we've had, things only you would know." His voice cracked. "It says you've been experiencing paranoid delusions about being watched and that you might try to blame other people for things you've done." I could hear the doubt creeping into his voice. Even Tyler, who knew me better than anyone, was starting to question my sanity. Jake had poisoned that email with just enough personal details to make it convincing. The counselor who'd arrived with security finally spoke up. "Sarah, regardless of what's happening with this investigation, we're concerned about your mental state. The live stream showed someone in distress, and now these emails suggest you might be struggling with some serious issues." "I'm not crazy." The words came out louder than I intended, and I immediately realized how that sounded. Every denial would just reinforce Jake's narrative that I was having a breakdown. My laptop chimed again. Another email, this time from the campus newspaper editor. "Sarah, we're running a story tomorrow about the financial aid fraud investigation. Would you like to comment on the allegations, or should we just reference your social media confession from this afternoon?" Jake had timed everything perfectly. Even if the investigation eventually proved my innocence, the story would run first. By the time the truth came out, everyone would remember the dramatic live stream confession and the concerned emails about my mental health. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Phase 3 is just getting started. Wire the money, or tomorrow's newspaper will be very educational for everyone who knows you." I stared at Jake's latest text, my mind reeling from the implications of Phase 3. The campus security officers were still waiting for me to cooperate, the counselor was eyeing me with professional concern, and my phone kept buzzing with confused messages from everyone I cared about. But then something clicked. Jake had made a crucial mistake in his digital manipulation. He'd gotten too elaborate, too confident in his technological superiority. The deepfake livestream had been flawless, but it required sophisticated software and processing power that left digital fingerprints. "Dr. Peterson," I said, putting my phone on speaker so everyone could hear. "The live stream that just happened, when exactly did it start broadcasting?" There was a pause as she checked something on her computer. According to the platform timestamps, it began at 3:47 p.m. and ran for 12 minutes. I turned to the security officers. "What time did you receive the call to come to my room?" The first officer checked his radio log. "Dispatch sent us at 3:52 p.m. We were responding to reports of a student in distress broadcasting live." "That's 5 minutes after the stream started," I said, my voice gaining strength. "But you didn't see me at my computer when you walked in, did you?" I was standing across the room, and the stream was still running. The officers exchanged glances. The counselor stepped closer to my laptop, studying the now blank screen where the fake confession had been playing. "Ma'am," the second officer said slowly, "are you saying someone else was broadcasting from your computer while you weren't at it?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. And I can prove it." I navigated to my laptop's activity log, my hands shaking with adrenaline rather than fear now. Look at the processing usage during that 12-minute window. My computer was running at 97% capacity, but I wasn't running any programs that intensive. Dr. Peterson's voice came through the speaker. "Sarah, our IT department is saying the same thing. The remote access software on your computer was using massive amounts of bandwidth during that exact time frame, consistent with receiving and processing video data from an external source." My phone rang with an incoming call from Emma. I answered immediately, hoping she had more ammunition. "Sarah, you need to know, Jake just tried to contact me." Emma's voice was urgent. "He called from a different number, trying to convince me that you've been manipulating me, that you were actually the one running the blackmail scheme and had been using his identity." The officers were listening intently now. "Ma'am, can you put that caller on speaker as well?" "Emma, can you repeat what Jake told you?" "He said that everything I thought he did to me was actually you operating under his name. That you've been running a long-term psychological manipulation campaign to make him look guilty while you continued stealing scholarship money." Emma's voice hardened. "But here's the thing, he knew details about our conversation today that I never told him. Details about what evidence I sent you and what we discussed about other victims." My blood went cold. "Emma, you called me from your mother's phone the second time." "Exactly. The only way Jake could know what we talked about is if he was monitoring your calls in real time." I looked at the officers. "He's listening to everything. Right now, probably." A thought struck me, dangerous but potentially decisive. "Which means he knows we're building a case that's going to destroy him." My laptop suddenly came alive again, applications opening and closing rapidly. But this time, instead of deleting evidence, someone was frantically trying to access files that were no longer there. The remote access software was working in overdrive. "He's panicking," I said, watching the frantic digital activity. "Look, he's trying to delete something from my computer, but he can't find it." Dr. Peterson's voice crackled through the speaker. "Sarah, our cybersecurity team is tracing the remote access in real time. They've got a location lock on the signal source. My phone buzzed with another text from Jake, "You think you're so clever. But I still have nuclear options you can't imagine. Check Tyler's social media in 60 seconds. The counselor stepped forward. Miss Peterson, whoever is doing this clearly has extensive technical capabilities and appears to be escalating their behavior. This has moved beyond simple blackmail. Officer Martinez spoke into his radio, "We need a unit dispatched to the technology center immediately. Possible cybercrime in progress with active monitoring of the suspect." My heart was pounding as I opened Tyler's Instagram account. Jake had 60 seconds to deploy whatever his nuclear option was, and I had a terrible feeling it was going to be even worse than the fake confession video. "Dr. Peterson, how fast can your IT team trace that remote access? They're saying another 3 to 4 minutes for a precise location." I looked at the countdown timer Jake had given me. 50 seconds left. Whatever he was about to do to Tyler's social media was going to be the final attack in his campaign to destroy my life. But for the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't facing it alone. The 60 seconds felt like an eternity, but when Tyler's Instagram updated, my heart nearly stopped. Jake had posted a video to Tyler's account showing me in an intimate situation with someone who wasn't Tyler. The timestamp indicated it was from last week when I told Tyler I was studying at the library. But as I watched in horror, I realized Jake had made his first real mistake. The person in the video with me was clearly Marcus, and Jake had been so focused on creating a devastating betrayal that he'd forgotten one crucial detail: Tyler had met my brother multiple times. My phone immediately rang. "Tyler. Sarah, what the hell is this supposed to be?" His voice was confused rather than angry. "This video shows you cheating on me, but that's obviously Marcus. Do you think I'm stupid?" Relief flooded through me so powerfully I nearly collapsed. "Tyler, you can tell it's Marcus." "Of course I can tell. He's got that scar on his left hand from his motorcycle accident, and he's wearing that stupid college ring he never takes off." Tyler's voice hardened with understanding. "Someone's been using your brother to fake these situations, haven't they?" Officer Martinez grabbed his radio. "We need that trace expedited. The suspect just distributed what appears to be fabricated intimate content." Dr. Peterson's voice came through my phone speaker. "Sarah, they've got him. Campus security is at the technology center now. Jake Morrison is in custody." My laptop screen suddenly went black, then displayed an error message about lost remote connection. After months of surveillance, the digital leash had finally been cut. But what about all the evidence he created? I asked, my voice shaking. "The emails, the fake confession video, all the lies he spread." "That's the beautiful thing about digital evidence," Dr. Peterson replied. "Everything Jake created has metadata, timestamps, and digital signatures that prove when and how it was made. Our forensics team can demonstrate that every piece of evidence against you was fabricated using the surveillance footage he illegally collected." Officer Martinez closed his radio. "Miss Peterson, we're going to need a full statement from you, but you're not under arrest. Based on what we've uncovered in the last hour, you're the victim of an extensive cyberstalking and fraud operation." My phone started buzzing with calls, my parents, Tyler, Emma, even Professor Martinez, who had apparently been cleared of all accusations. The counselor smiled kindly at me. "I think you're going to have quite a few people to call back." Over the next few hours, the full scope of Jake's operation unraveled. The FBI got involved when they discovered he'd been running similar schemes at 3 other colleges across the state. Emma's case was reopened, and 2 more victims came forward once the news broke. The scholarship money Jake had stolen was recovered from his various accounts, and every piece of fabricated evidence against me was forensically proven to be fake. The campus newspaper ran a front-page story about the cyberstalking ring instead of the fraud allegations against me. 3 weeks later, I sat in the courtroom as Jake pled guilty to federal charges of wire fraud, identity theft, cyberstalking, and extortion. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison in order to pay restitution to all his victims. Tyler squeezed my hand as we walked out of the courthouse. "I still can't believe he thought I wouldn't recognize your twin brother." I laughed for what felt like the first time in months. I'm just grateful his arrogance finally caught up with him. My inheritance was still safely in my account, my reputation was restored, and Professor Martinez had even written me a recommendation letter for graduate school. But most importantly, Jake would never be able to hurt another student again. The nightmare was finally over, and I had won.